The fog rolls off the Atlantic like ghost breath, thick enough to choke on. Captain Elias Drake tastes iron in the air, blood in the brine, or maybe just the rust of his own heart, while the lantern in his fist flickers, spitting oil that hisses against the deck boards. Somewhere beyond the white wall of mist, the wreck groans, a dying animal sound that sets every rope on his cutter humming in sympathy. He shouldn't be here. No sane man sails the graveyard shoals at moonset, when the tide turns treacherous and the reef uncloaks its teeth. Yet here he is, drawn by a rumor older than grief. The wanderer burned 3 winters ago, but her copper fittings still glint beneath the waves. 3 winters. 3 winters since Rose stepped onto that deck with his unborn child tucked beneath her ribs and never stepped off. 3 winters since the letter arrived, singed at the edges, telling him the ship caught fire by accident. Accidents don't leave bullet holes in a hull, but Elias has learned the Admiralty writes its own truths. Tonight he's come to steal back one small piece of Rose. One bolt, one plank, one memory he can hold without drowning. The fog thins for a heartbeat. And that's when he sees it, a cradle carved from wicker, wedged between the wanderer's blackened ribs like a bird's nest in a lightning-struck tree. Impossible. The sea should have swallowed that cradle whole. Should have dragged it to the abyss where secrets rot. Instead it rocks gently, rock, 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 each creak a lullaby to the dead. Elias's boots slip on wet oak as he steers closer. The lantern swings, casting gold bars across the wreck. Inside the cradle lies a baby no bigger than a seabird, wrapped in oilskin gone gray with salt. Her cheeks are flushed fever red, her fists clenched tight as starfish. She is alive. Alive where nothing alive should be. And then his heart stops. That in the infant's grip gleams a silver locket on a broken chain. The dolphin engraving catches the light. His dolphin, the one he pressed into Rose's palm the morning he begged her not to sail. He reaches out, fingers trembling like rigging in a gale. The clasp is bent, the hinge sprung open. Inside, where Rose's miniature portrait should smile back at him, there is only a single lock of golden hair, fine as silk, the color of sunrise, not Rose's dark auburn. A wave slaps the hull, jolting him. The baby's eyes flutter open, pale, storm-gray eyes, Rose's eyes, and she looks straight at him without fear. For the span of one breath, Elias forgets the reef, forgets the tide, forgets the weight of 3 years' silence. All he knows is the impossible weight of that locket in an impossible child's hand. Behind him, the foghorn of another vessel moans, deep, authoritative. A cutter? A warship? Sound carries strangely in mist. Elias snatches hope. Yes, he names her in that instant because what else can you name a miracle? And cradles her against his chest. The locket chain digs into his palm like a brand. 3 questions detonate in his skull. 1. How did a 6-month-old survive a fire that killed every soul aboard? 2. Whose golden hair now rests where Rose's portrait should be? 3. And why, God help him, does the baby smile as if she recognizes the man who failed to save her mother? The lantern gutters, threatening to snuff. Somewhere beyond the fog, a second boat grows louder, closer. Elias tastes panic sharp as bilge water. If the Admiralty finds him here, they'll call it grave robbing. If they see the locket, they'll call it treason. But if he leaves the wreck, he leaves the only clue Rose ever left him. A gust of wind claws the fog aside. He glimpses the reef's jagged spine yards away, white foam boiling where would meet stone. Dawn is a bruise on the horizon. He has minutes before the tide swings and traps them both. The baby's tiny fingers curl around his thumb, anchoring him to the present. Elias lifts the locket, presses it to his lips once. Salt and metal and something faintly floral, Rose's perfume ghosting across years, and slips the chain over Hope's head. It rests against her fevered skin like a promise or a curse. Below deck, the air is thick as wet wool and twice as cold. Elias lights the small binnacle lamp, its flame trembling like a guilty conscience. Hope, he can't stop calling her that now, lies on his bunk, wrapped in the oilskin and his only blanket. Her fevered skin steams in the chill. Her breath whistles through tiny nostrils crusted with salt. Each exhale is a fragile promise that she might live long enough for his questions to kill her. He pours the last of the fresh water into a tin cup, dips a rag and presses it to her lips. She sucks greedily, eyes never leaving his face, as if she knows he's bargaining with fate 1 drop at a time. 1 drop for Rose. 1 drop for the truth. 1 drop for whatever hell waits over the horizon. Because the horizon is no longer empty. The mate's log, charred at the edges, found wedged beneath the cradle, rests on the chart table like an unopened curse. Elias flips to the final page with hands that haven't stopped shaking since he touched silver chain to infant skin. Fire spread from the hold faster than rumor. Mrs. Drake ordered the women and children to the longboat, but the Commodore's guard fired on us, claiming mutiny. She barricaded herself in the passenger berth with an infant, her own, born 3 days prior. Last seen shielding the child from. Ink trails into a scorched blot. Elias reads it again, louder, as if volume can force the words to finish themselves. Her own. Rose had sailed 6 months pregnant. He'd kissed the swell of her belly goodbye through layers of wool and fear. Yet the hair inside the locket is golden, not the dark auburn that had spilled across his pillow every dawn of their too-short marriage. A single lock of stranger's hair. A child born at sea. A fire set by the Commodore's guard. The pieces don't fit, they slice. He presses a palm to Hope's forehead. Still burning. If he doesn't reach port in 12 hours, the fever will cook her alive. But the nearest port is Boston, and Boston is where Commodore Hawk's flag snaps above the customs house like a wolf's grin. Elias has seen what happens to men who carry Hawk's secrets. They disappear into Admiralty basements and never reappear, not even as bones. A distant boom rolls across the water, cannon practice or warning shot, he can't tell. The sound crawls inside his ribs and nests. He checks the chronometer, 3:17 a.m. The Iron Duke is 3 miles astern, running lights doused, hull painted blacker than sin. Harrow's cutter had shadowed him since dusk, close enough to taste his wake. Elias had waved them off with a lantern signal, nothing to salvage, return to station. But Harrow's reply had been a single white flare, maintain position. Maintain position until what? Until the Commodore arrives to collect a child and a locket and the last loose thread of his crime? Elias paces the cramped cabin, for strides port to starboard, for strides back. Each creak of the plank sounds like a question. Coward or father? Run or fight? The questions sharpen into blades when Hope whimpers, her tiny fingers scrabbling at empty air, searching for a mother who will never come. He kneels, forehead touching the edge of the bunk. I don't know who you are, he whispers. But I know who you're not. You're not a ghost. You're not a mistake. And you're not going back to the man who burned your mother alive. The words taste like an oath and a death sentence. Footsteps scrape the deck above, one set, cautious. Arrows. The lieutenant's voice drifts down the companionway, pitched low, almost pleading. Captain Drake. Permission to come below. Alone. Elias's hand goes to the pistol tucked in his belt. 6 shots. 6 chances against a warship's company. He thumbs back the hammer. State your business, Lieutenant. Pause. Then, I knew Rose. She was my cousin. Please. Cousin. The syllable detonates inside Elias's skull. He cracks the hatch 2 inches. Harrow stands silhouetted against a sky the color of wet slate, no rifle, hands raised. Moonlight glints on the tears cutting channels through the salt on his cheeks. I have minutes before Hawk's longboats launch, Harrow says. He wants the child. Calls her evidence. Calls her property. I call her family. His voice cracks on the last word. There's a cutter waiting in the lee of Seal Rock. I can cover your escape, but only if you sail west, into uncharted waters. No charts, no ports, no forgiveness. West. Past the edge of the known world. Where whales beach themselves and storms are born. Where a man with a baby and a broken heart can vanish forever. Elias looks down at Hope. Her fevered eyes are open, fixed on him with absolute trust. Somewhere behind that fever, Rose is watching too. Harrow's whisper is barely louder than the wind. Choose, Elias. Run and live with the mystery. Stay and die with the truth. But choose now. The cannon booms again. Closer. The Iron Duke's silhouette rises like a cliff of iron and canvas, black sails swallowing stars. Elias lifts Hope against his chest. Her heartbeat taps a Morse code only he can read. Go. 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 He meets Harrow's eyes. If we're caught, you never saw us. Harrow nods once, sharp as a salute. If you reach land, tell her she was loved enough to risk everything. He disappears into the dark. Elias turns to the helm, sets a course west by northwest, and prays the ocean remembers mercy. Above deck, the foghorn sounds a third time, no longer practice but pursuit. The choice is made. The clock starts now. The lantern swings with the swell, painting the cabin walls in sickle-thin arcs of gold and black. Elias counts the pulses, 6 swings, 6 heartbeats, then snaps the log shut. Outside, the wind has teeth now. It gnaws at the rigging, snarls through stays, and carries the low thunder of canvas straining to burst. But the loudest sound is the baby's fever breath, sawing in and out like a blade on wet stone. He checks the chronometer again. 4:12 a.m. sunrise in 97 minutes, high tide in 98. After that, the reef uncloaks itself like a trap sprung. He has exactly one tide to outrun Commodore Hawk, one tide to outrun the truth, one tide to decide whether living is worth becoming a ghost. A red flare streaks across the sky, Harrow's signal that the Iron Duke is closing. It blooms like a wound above the mast tops, then gutters into darkness. Elias tastes gunpowder on the wind. He straps Hope to his chest with Rose's old sash, nodding it twice for luck, thrice for terror. The locket presses between them, a cold coin against skin. "Hold tight, little Storm," he whispers and feels her heartbeat tap back. "I'm trying." He wheels the helm hard to port. The cutter heels so steep the boom dips into the foam, carving a white scar across the black water. Every creak is a question. Will the mast hold? Will the reef forgive? Will your courage last longer than your fear? Behind him, the Iron Duke's silhouette rises like a moving cliff. Black sails, black hull, black intent. 4 decks of cannon trained on a single man and a child who may or may not be his. Hawk stands at the bow rail, coat snapping, spyglass glinting, an executioner admiring the gallows he's built. "Captain Drake," the Commodore's voice booms through a speaking trumpet, the words skimming the waves like grape shot. "Surrender the child and I'll grant you a quick death. Keep her and I'll drag you both back in chains." Elias's answer is to haul the jib sheet tighter. The cutter leaps forward, hull kissing the edge of the reef. Spray explodes over the bow, tasting of copper and fear. He can feel the coral gnawing at the keel, a rasp of stone on oak. One wrong breath and they're splinters. Harrow's cutter appears off the starboard quarter, running lights doused, hull low in the water. The lieutenant cups his hands around his mouth. "Drake." "Northwest passage between Seal Rock and Widow's Teeth. 10 fathoms if you hug the cliff. I'll buy you 5 minutes. Make it 6 and you live. 5 minutes. 5 minutes against an empire." Elias spins the wheel. The cutter veers, sails cracking like rifle shots. Harrow's vessel surges between him and the Iron Duke, a fragile shield of pine and prayer. A warning shot thunders from the flagship. The ball skips past Harrow's bow, sending up a geyser of white. Smoke coils across the moon. Elias risks one glance back. Harrow raises a hand in salute, no in farewell. The cutter is already turning broadside, exposing its flank. Elias's throat locks. Harrow isn't buying minutes, he's buying martyrdom. The reef narrows to a knife's edge. Starboard, black rocks glisten like obsidian teeth. Port side, the abyss yawns. Elias counts the heartbeats between thunderclaps of surf. 1, 2, 3, then spins the wheel again. The keel scrapes stone, screams and frees itself in a shower of sparks. Hope whimpers against his chest. Salt stings her fevered cheeks, her tiny fists beat the rhythm of his panic. Elias presses his lips to her damp hair. Almost through, he lies. Another flare arcs overhead, green this time. Harrow's final signal, run. Behind them the Iron Duke's bow chaser roars. The ball shrieks past Elias's ear, splintering the mizzenmast. Rigging whips through the air like serpents. Canvas collapses in a tangled shroud. The cutter lurches, half-blinded, but momentum carries them forward. The passage between Seal Rock and Widow's Teeth yawns ahead, a slot of churning silver barely wider than the beam. Elias holds his breath. Wind howls through the slot like the voice of every sailor who ever drowned here. The cutter slides between stone walls slick with kelp. 4-3 heartbeats, the world is nothing but spray and shadow. Then they burst into open sea, reef behind them, horizon endless. But triumph is a brittle thing. The mainmast groans, cracks, and topples over the side in a tangle of hemp and splinters. Canvas drags like a sea anchor. The cutter slows, wounded and wallowing. The Iron Duke cannot follow the narrow passage, but her longboats are already lowering, 6 of them black against the moonlit water. Each carries 6 men. 36 rifles. One order, bring back the child. Elias cuts the rigging free with his knife, teeth clenched so tight his jaw creaks. The cutter limps west, wind dying, tide turning. Dawn creeps over the rim of the world, first a bruise then a blade of fire. 97 minutes gone. 98. Hope's fever spikes, her tiny body convulses. Elias rips a strip from his shirt, soaks it in the last of the water, and lays it across her brow. The locket glints between them, catching the newborn sun like a signal mirror. He lifts it, thumb rubbing the dolphin engraving until it warms. Inside, the lock of golden hair seems to shimmer, alive. Whose hair? A sister? A stranger's child switched at birth? A message Rose never got to send? The questions are stones in his chest, The answers are somewhere beyond the blank space on the chart labeled "Here be monsters." Behind, the longboats rise and fall like black-backed gulls. Rifle barrels glint. The Commodore's voice carries faint but sharp, "Row you dogs. 1 hour to sunrise bounty." Elias looks west. No land. No rescue. Only the unknown. He looks down. Hope's eyes, Rose's eyes, open, lucid for the first time. She studies him as if she's been waiting centuries for this moment. Then, impossibly, she smiles, gums bright as new ivory. Elias's throat knots. He cups the locket in both hands, feels its weight, its heat, its terrible promise. The sea is rising, the reef is closing, the longboats are closing faster. One tide left. One choice. The dawn sky splits open like a fresh wound, red bleeding into gold, then into the white-hot glare of inevitability. Elias has 90 seconds before the Iron Duke's longboats close the last 100 yards. 90 seconds before coral teeth rip the cutter's belly. 90 seconds to decide what a man's life is worth against a child's first breath. Wind roars through the snapped rigging, whipping the fallen mainsail into a thrashing sea serpent that drags the hull sideways. Elias saws at the canvas with his knife, rope fibers parting like sinew. Each cut frees speed, but speed is a double-edged blade. Now the cutter races bow first toward Widow's Teeth Reef, where surf explodes 20 feet high in silver plumes. Spray drenches Hope against his chest. Her fevered skin steams in the cold. She doesn't cry, she watches wide-eyed as if she already knows how this ends. A rifle cracks. The ball thunks into the transom inches from Elias's head. He doesn't flinch, flinching wastes heartbeats. Another shot splits the taffrail. Splinters sting his cheek, mixing salt and blood until he can't taste the difference. The longboats fan out, oars rising and falling like black wings. 36 rifles. One command, no prisoners. He glances up at the mast stump, 6 feet of shattered timber, jury-rigged with a scrap of storm jib. Not enough sail to outrun death, but maybe enough to outrun choice. The reef looms. Jagged coral claws skyward between foam geysers. Beyond it lies open ocean, uncharted, unforgiving, maybe endless. Behind him lies Hawk's justice. A noose for piracy, a cell for the child, and Rose's name erased from every ledger. Ahead lies only the unknown and the promise he whispered at her grave, "I will protect what you loved." Another volley. A ball punches through the jib, tearing a hole big enough to see dawn through. Elias feels the cutter lurch as the sea reaches up to grab her. 30 yards to the reef. 20. 10. He throws the helm hard to port. The hull screams against coral, a drawn-out metallic shriek that vibrates through his bones. Wood splinters spray like shrapnel. The cutter bucks, tilts, nearly rolls, but the reef's teeth only graze her belly. Then, miracle or curse, they shear free into the channel beyond, water foaming crimson where the keel bleeds. But the reef is a gate, not a wall. The longboats follow, oars lifting high to clear coral heads. Rifles crack again. One ball slices the line holding the makeshift sail. Canvas collapses in a sodden heap. Speed dies. The cutter wallows, half-swamped, riding lower every second. Elias staggers to the stern locker, flips it open. Inside, 3 sticks of dynamite left from his railroad days, wrapped in oilskin, fuses coiled like sleeping serpents. He never thought he'd use them for anything but blasting stumps. Now they gleam like dark salvation. Hope stirs, tiny fingers clutching the locket. Her lips move, no sound, just the shape of a word. Elias leans close. "Mama," she breathes, eyes unfocused, speaking to a ghost only she can see. The word detonates inside his chest harder than any fuse. He presses a kiss to her salt-sticky hair. "Not today," he whispers. "Not ever." He lashes the dynamite beneath the taffrail with a length of spun yarn, then wedges the coil of fuse into the powder keg that serves as the cutter's ballast. 30 feet of fuse. 30 seconds of burn. He strikes flint to slow match. Sparks bloom like tiny suns. Behind him, the first longboat scrapes the hull. A Marine's head appears over the rail, rifle rising. Elias meets his eyes and smiles, a smile that has nothing to do with mercy. He lifts the coil of fuse, flame crawling toward the keg like a fuse toward judgment. The Marine hesitates. Elias counts. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. The fuse hisses, a serpent tasting air. Hope's heartbeat taps against his ribs, steady as a drum calling soldiers to battle. Back. Elias roars at the Marines. Back or we all burn. For one heartbeat the world balances on the edge of a blade. Then the Marine sees the keg, the fuse, the madness in Elias's eyes. He drops his rifle and lunges for the oars. The longboat recoils like a struck dog. 20 seconds. Elias slams the helm hard starboard, aiming the cutter's bow at the reef's narrow throat. Wind howls through torn canvas. Coral flashes by on either side, sharp as dragon teeth. 15 seconds. He cuts the fuse shorter with his knife. 10 seconds now, maybe 9. Hope's weight against his chest is impossibly light, yet heavier than the ocean itself. 10. The reef mouth yawns ahead. 30 feet of white water and then open sea. Beyond it, the sun crests the horizon, blinding. 5. Elias wraps both arms around Hope, turns his back to the blast and jumps. Cold water slams into him like a wall of knives. The cutter vanishes in a bloom of fire and splinters. The concussion punches the air from his lungs, drives him deeper, deeper, until coral scrapes his shoulder and the world above becomes a red-orange inferno. He kicks upward, lungs screaming, Hope clutched beneath his chin. They breach into daylight amid a rain of burning debris. Pieces of mast, of sail, of longboat spin past like the wreckage of yesterday's sins. One of Hawk's boats is capsized, men floundering in slick fire. Another drifts rudderless, its bow stove in by the blast. Elias treads water, gasping. The current grabs them, sweeps them west, away from the reef, away from the Iron Duke, away from every map ever drawn. Hope coughs against his neck, a sound like the first word of a new story. Behind them, the cutter burns on the reef, a pyre visible for miles. The Iron Duke looms, too large to follow, her guns silent now, either in grief or in grudging respect. Elias looks down. Hope's eyes, Rose's eyes, meet his. She smiles, and this time it's not fever. It's sunrise. The lighthouse rose from the cliff like a promise kept too late. Its stones, salvaged from the cutter's own charred ribs, still smelled faintly of salt and smoke when Elias set the final keystone. That was 7 winters ago. Now the tower stands 63 feet tall, its beacon sweeping the same Atlantic that once tried to swallow him whole. Every dusk, when the lens catches the last light and flings it across the waves, he feels Rose watching from the water's edge, nodding approval. Hope, no longer the fevered infant he hauled from burning wreckage, darts barefoot through the vegetable rows that terrace the cliff. Her hair, once a wisp of gold, now streams like sunrise, and when she laughs the gulls wheel overhead as if they remember her first breath. She is 6 going on forever, and every morning she asks the same question, "Tell me again how Mama found me." Elias never corrects the pronoun. In her stories, Rose is the one who reached across death with dolphin-engraved silver and placed the child in his empty arms. The truth, that a dying sailor's lock of hair still rests inside the locket, has become a secret he keeps like a prayer. Some truths are too sharp for small hands, some mysteries are mercy. He kneels beside the garden gate, fitting the last hinge. The gate itself is driftwood, gray and smooth as bone. Carved into the top rail is a single word: return. It faces the sea, always open, a dare to every storm that thinks it can outlast love. Inside the cottage, the rebuilt locket hangs on a nail above the hearth. The portrait compartment now holds 2 images: Rose's miniature on one side, Hope's first charcoal sketch, 3 crooked stick figures and a lighthouse, on the other. When the fire crackles, the silver warms and seems to pulse, a second heartbeat in the room. Footsteps on the path. Elias straightens, shading his eyes against the low sun. Lieutenant Harrow, now Captain Harrow, beard streaked with early gray, climbs the last rise carrying a canvas satchel. He salutes with 2 fingers the way sailors do when words feel too small. Between them lies the unspoken ledger. 1 cutter scuttled, 6 longboats lost, and a commodore who hanged himself in a Boston jail rather than face trial. The empire has washed its hands, the ocean has not. Harrow sets the satchel on the gatepost. Inside are charts, blank beyond the 42nd parallel, and a letter sealed with Admiralty wax. Elias breaks the seal, reads the single line scrawled in a clerk's neat hand. Latitude and longitude of your choosing. No questions, no pursuit. A pardon disguised as permission. He folds the parchment into a paper boat and lets the wind carry it over the cliff. The empire can keep its maps. He has drawn his own on the face of his daughter. Hope barrels into Harrow's knees, scattering gulls. "Uncle Jonah, did you bring stories?" Harrow lifts her high, spinning until her laughter rings off the rocks. "Only the ones you've already outgrown, sprite." He sets her down, ruffles her hair, and adds quietly to Elias, "She has Rose's stubborn chin." Elias smiles, the kind that starts in the eyes. She has her mother's refusal to drown. They walk the cliff path together, past the stone cairn where Elias buried the last of the dynamite sticks. Never used, never needed. Past the rosemary hedge Rose once joked would grow faster than their savings. Past the small wooden skiff pulled high above the tide line, its hull painted the same blue as Hope's favorite dress. At the lighthouse door Harrow hesitates. She'll ask about the world one day. What then? Elias glances at the western horizon, endless and unmarked. Then we'll sail until the questions run out of breath. Inside, the great lens turns on its clockwork, scattering prisms across the walls. Hope presses her palms to the glass, watching the beams sweep across the darkening sea. Papa, who's it looking for? He kneels beside her, voice soft as candlewick. Anyone who's lost. Same as us. Dinner is chowder thick with clams and thyme, bread still steaming from the oven. They eat in silence broken only by the wind and the rhythmic tick of the lens. When the dishes are done, Elias lifts Hope onto his lap and opens the locket. The firelight dances over silver, over two faces caught in miniature forever. Mama's watching, Hope whispers. Always, Elias answers. And she says you're braver than the sea. Later, when the child is asleep and the lighthouse beam arcs its steady circle, Elias steps outside. The moon hangs low, a polished doubloon above the waves. He closes the gate, return, then opens it again because gates are for choosing and love has already chosen. He stands at the cliff's edge, coat flapping like a sail. Below, the Atlantic breathes in long, slow sighs. Somewhere beneath those waves the wanderer sleeps, her timbers now coral, her secrets now shells. He raises the locket to his lips, once, twice, then tucks it safely beneath his shirt. The chain is warm against his skin, warm as the hand that once fastened it. A single gull cries overhead, circles once and wings westward. Elias watches until it becomes a mote of light against the stars, then turns back to the lighthouse where a child dreams of dolphins and lighthouses and mothers who never truly leave. The beacon sweeps across the dark, steady, unafraid, and somewhere beyond its reach the ocean keeps its promise, not to forget but to forgive.